What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Renegade Marquee on the Renegade Pop Culture Podcast Network. My name is Mike. I'll be your host this evening. Joining me, we've got Lord Hades. Hayden, how we doing?
It's showtime, baby.
It is showtime. And this is a celebration of Tim Burton's probably one of his most well-regarded films, and I guess now franchise, Beetlejuice. So we'll be talking about pretty much everything except for like the video games and the books and comics. We're mostly just focusing on the movies, a little bit of the animated series, and the musical. But before we get too deep into this discussion, why don't we start from the beginning? Hayden, how did you get first into Beetlejuice?
So my Beetlejuice story begins when a babysitter of mine put it on for me, and because she knew I liked spooky shit. So that was like just kind of it for me. Like after that, I was so obsessed with that movie, and it probably in a lot of ways formed a lot of who I am right now. It really established this like dark sense of humor in me, and I really admired Lydia also. Like that was just a character I saw who was unique and different, and there was just something about that also resonated. And yeah, definitely one of my go-to movies in terms of comfort, and I am proud to say that I have been a Beetlehead ever since.
Yeah, so like a lot of people in my generation, I came into the Beetlejuice franchise through the cartoon. This was back when Cartoon Network had the brilliant idea to program Beetlejuice and the 90s Addams Family cartoon right next to each other. So that was sort of the beginning of my obsession with the more macabre side of animation. Between that, obviously Scooby-Doo and Courage the Cowardly Dog. But Beetlejuice was something special because A, it came from the mind of Tim Burton, and B, that's kind of where my love for puns came from. I'm learning that now as I'm rewatching various episodes of the cartoon. I didn't get into the actual movie until years later. First, when I just randomly watched it on, I think they broadcast it on Disney Channel every now and then. And then I saw it for the first time in theaters about 5 years ago. And by that point, I had already been pretty well versed in Tim Burton's filmography, for better or for worse.
So I think just to like jump off of that, after I became obsessed with the movie, I immediately begged my parents to let me get the VHSs of the volumes of the cartoon, which they had just kind of assorted season 1 episodes, I believe. So that was most of my knowledge for the show going forward. And I did definitely watch those VHSs a lot, and they were like greatly amusing, and they are still greatly amusing. It's a really fun show, and the voice acting is great, even though the Canadian accents do sometimes slip out.
Yeah, I noticed that watching the first episode, especially because honestly, that's kind of the weakest one, only because they were still trying to find their footing. They didn't really know what the tone of the show was going to be. So there was kind of a lot of trial and error. But yeah, just the more I watch the show, the more I just kind of marvel at the creativity of it all. And just how much fun Beetlejuice can be as the protagonist, which is a huge departure from his depiction in all of the other media.
Yeah, for sure. And this is just as an aside, when I was a kid, in response to like how like the cartoon did was in relation to the movie, I kind of just in my head like came up with them doing something similar with Hocus Pocus and just making the Sanderson sisters friends with the kids in the movie in the hypothetical animated series that they would do, just because that's where my brain went.
You know, I'm actually kind of surprised they never tried to do that, because that was just the thing you did in the 80s and 90s.
Yep. And Also, this is just a completely different thing. There was one episode that I watched, and I, as a kid, kind of just convinced myself that these two random background characters were the Maitlands, just so they would be included in the cartoon. They definitely probably were not the Maitlands, but just let me have the young me. Just let 8-year-old me have that, I guess.
Now, as you've probably seen more episodes recently, are there any that really stand out?
Yeah, for sure. So one that I saw was To Beetle or Not to Beetle, which is all Shakespeare references, which I, as a Shakespeare nerd, just was laughing so much at how many references they managed to cram into the show and just make it kid appropriate. Just like reference after reference, a lot of great gags and jokes. One of my favorites was Out Mixed Spot. If you know, you know.
My favorite is Potpourri, where after reading Lydia's book of Edgar Allan Poe poems, the man himself comes to visit. And like, if you're an Edgar Allan Poe fan, particularly The Raven, this one gets a lot of laughs.
Yeah, that's a really good one too.
Season 4 has a surprisingly great amount of, well, it's the longest season, but because of that, they just had more surprisingly great episodes.
Yeah. Like when I was jumping around, I did kind of notice how much fun season 4 seemed to be having. So I definitely do want to check out a lot more of those going forward, because I did not have access to a lot of those because the cartoon wasn't airing anymore and the internet wasn't really a thing yet when I would have been obsessed with the cartoon. So darn you, timing.
For anyone who wants to go back and watch any of the show, it is now streaming for free on Tubi, all 4 seasons, and I would highly recommend it. But of course, we wouldn't have this show without the 1988 original movie. And while Tim Burton started his feature directorial career with Pee-wee's Big Adventure, I honestly think Beetlejuice is the start of Tim Burton becoming who he is.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry about that.
All good.
Yeah, Beetlejuice definitely set the standard of what we can expect from Tim Burton. And it's just very funny to just look back at how many of the actors involved just fully did not get the script because it was so kind of radical in a lot of ways for its time.
And even some of the dialogue kind of feels like it's poking fun at itself. Like when Barbara says, like, while reading the handbook, no, like none of this makes any sense.
Yeah. There's a lot of it's just very, I kind of appreciate how it just kind of expects you to buy into everything. They just like don't give you really any wiggle room to just accept it. They're just like, this is how it is. This is just what you're going to be watching. Enjoy.
Yeah. And I think that's why the movie translated so well to animation, because this movie was never celebrated for its plot. It's mostly just Bo Welch's amazing production design, the cast, which, except if I'm being honest, except for Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis, while I love them individually, compared to the rest of the cast, they're just playing it way too straight.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I don't think anybody's favorite character is necessarily the Maitlands.
No.
Though somebody might also say like they might be like somewhat good as like an anchor before launching into the crazy.
And that's fine. Like, you kind of need characters like those in a movie with a world that's this bonkers. Like, you step into that door of the Netherworld and you're pretty much left to your own devices.
A lot of my favorite moments definitely come from Catherine O'Hara and Glenn Shadix as Delia and Otho. Just a lot of very funny moments with them. Just constant gaucheness and over the top dialogue, and just they're very fun. And I feel like I appreciate them now more as an adult than I maybe did when I was a kid watching it.
Same. In my most recent rewatch of the movie, I really kind of honed in on Catherine O'Hara and her just unhinged line delivery.
Mm-hmm. She understood the assignment.
I think she wrote the assignment, frankly.
Yeah, she just walked in and everybody instantly snapped into place.
And as far as physical comedy goes, the Banana Boat song is just pitch perfect.
It's iconic for a reason.
So iconic that it's one of the musical numbers in the Broadway play.
That's right.
Which we'll get to more in a second, but we have to talk about Michael Keaton. And the fact that he chews this much scenery in roughly 12 to 15 minutes of screen time is honestly impressive.
Yeah, he feels like such a presence throughout that you don't even realize that he's barely in it.
I think that's just a testament to how well paced the film is. Like the movie's only like 92 minutes, but the way that it's edited and how Beetlejuice is sprinkled in bits and pieces throughout the runtime, he feels like a larger presence than compared to how much time you actually get to see him.
Yeah, just so many unhinged line deliveries. It's just always fun to watch. And just a great performance.
It's also just kind of funny how he doesn't really even get a proper introduction until like more than halfway through the film.
Right.
Then of course, his monologue where Adam asks, like, what are your qualifications?
And fun fact, I have fully used that monologue for auditions when I was a kid.
Nice.
I've seen The Exorcist about 167 times, and it keeps getting funnier every single time I see it. And that was my audition for the musical. Thank you.
All right. Let's talk about the musical now, because it's honestly one of my biggest regrets as far as like Broadway productions that I never got to see in person. I'm so mad I never got to see the first run of Beetlejuice.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not entirely on you because there is the kind of spotty history with its entire run, which how well versed are you in what exactly happened?
Well, I know there is one major roadblock, which, kind of set everything back.
So first off, I would recommend watching Wait in the Wings video on Beetlejuice because that's a great video. But the story of its closure does begin a little bit sooner because there was a bit of a contract issue with the Winter Garden Theater, which is where they initially performed. So basically the contract more or less said, okay, so if the show makes X amount of money, then you can keep the theater, basically. Or rather, it was, if you don't hit this amount of money by this date, you will be out. You're getting replaced with another show. So they didn't quite make the money that they wanted. So then that was basically, okay, so soon-ish you're going to be on your way out. But the weird thing was after that date had expired, there were like a lot of people that did start going to see it because of TikTok videos trending. And then it did start like kind of doing like moderately kind of okay for itself. And like they thought, okay, well, we are making the money now. Maybe we can stay. But no, the contract still stood and they got kicked out. And that was kind of the beginning of the Save Beetlejuice movement. And what was impressive was after this, COVID hit, as we all know, and that also halted the Pro Shot being made, which was going to be filmed in April of 2020. Never happened. And we're a little bit sadder as a society for that. But thankfully, the show got a second chance and it reopened in another theater after the theaters began reopening. It opened in a brand new theater with the majority of the cast returning. And to my knowledge, that's like kind of the first time something like that has happened where a show that fully closed ended up being remounted again for at least like that period of time. So yeah, more you know.
I'm glad that there's a happy ending to that story. And I'm also kind of glad that the national tour seems to be going well. Well, except for that show where Lauren Boebert was escorted for behavior.
But so I have seen the show live 3 times now. So I'm tempting fate. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. Twice on Broadway and once on tour. And it is just a really, really great show for me. And when I first heard of it, obviously I was going to love it because it's Beetlejuice and I love Beetlejuice. But I think I was just kind of surprised by how much heart I thought it had in a way that the movie kind of admittedly didn't. And they really did kind of make the story a lot more streamlined. And what I really appreciate about the show is that it feels like its own completely different thing. They didn't just take the movie, add songs, they just went in a completely different direction and just kind of took a little bit from the movie, took a little bit from the cartoon, and just kind of threw it all in the blender and just kind of made this really, really well done show. And in a lot of ways, I do think it's better than the movie, which is saying something coming from me because I adore the movie and the movie is like so formative for me. But the musical like is just this really, really special thing.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said the musical has something that the movie doesn't, which is heart. And it is kind of funny how the music and lyrics are written by a guy named Eddie Perfect, because I do think the show is perfect.
Yeah. And so one thing is I did actually at my mom's funeral, I didn't sing Dead Mom. Don't worry. That would have been way too on the nose. But I did sing Home from the musical because that was like actually the last show that we saw together before she passed away the next year. But so there is just something like kind of in the show that I think like is like as special to me as the movie. Just a lot that I've appreciated. And I have welcomed it into the Beetlejuice franchise with open arms.
And something I've kind of noticed as I've been watching the movies, the cartoon, and the musical, every single version does something different with these characters. Like Lydia is not exactly the same in each of these iterations, nor is Beetlejuice himself. They all bring something unique to the table. And for the musical, I think Alex Brightman was just absolute stellar casting.
Yeah, I think he was the first person I saw that was cast. And the second I saw that, I'm like, oh, yeah, of course. Because I knew him from when he did School of Rock. And it was just, I couldn't have cast it better myself.
And what's funny is I'm looking at his Wikipedia now, and Beetlejuice is the second Tim Burton adjacent musical that he was a part of, because he was in a production of Big Fish as well. And yeah, Brightman has exactly what you need for Beetlejuice. He's got the stage presence, like he's got great comedic timing. And one of the advantages that the Beetlejuice musical has is it really plays well with a live audience. This guy knows what I'm talking about.
There is no fourth wall, just Alex Brightman staring into your soul.
Exactly.
Sometimes puppet shows are sad.
Tell my story.
So tying back to the show's closing, the show that was actually replacing Beetlejuice at the Winter Garden Theater was a production of The Music Man starring Hugh Jackman and Sutton Foster that made a lot of choices I did not like, but that's another story. But they basically ended up going into that theater. And the sections, if you know the show, there's a part where Beetlejuice says, fuck Brigadoon. On some nights, Alex would say, fuck the Music Man as a little jab. Another performance I'd really like to highlight is Leslie Rodriguez Kritzer, who played Delia. And in the first run, she also doubled as Miss Argentina. I think she is so wonderfully daffy and has her own kind of unhinged line deliveries that will never leave my brain, no matter what. And just very fun performance, very different from Catherine O'Hara. And I kind of really just love that she is a completely new person, like we were saying earlier.
Yeah, her line delivery is just delightful. And the same could be said for Adam Danheiser as Charles Dietz.
One of my favorite lines by him is he just casually it makes me laugh every time, and I feel like people don't like reference that one as much, but he just says, I'm very good at sex, and it just makes me laugh so hard every time. just very, very, very all around the ensemble is great.
Even the Maitlands, I think, are more. They're given more.
So the original Adam, Rob McClure, was the only cast member not to return to the restaged Broadway version because he actually was cast as lead in the Mrs. Doubtfire musical. So Carrie Butler returned as Barbara Maitland, but stepping into the role of Adam was the equally great David Josephsberg. And yeah, just every time, and it's just really fun also, if you have seen sections of all the different people who have played each different role and what they bring into it. And it's always just very fun to note those differences and what makes everybody so unique.
Mm-hmm. I only heard a little snippet of Justin Collette's performance as Beetlejuice for the US tour. Not even like a full performance, just a short that like demonstrates how he does the Beetlejuice voice, which is different from Alex Brightman. And if I ever do catch a performance of the national tour, that short was enough to convince me, oh yeah, he'll do a great job.
Yeah, I saw him in the tour, and he did a really great job. Just go see it if it comes to your area. So, do you have any favorite songs from the show?
I could cheat and just give 4 out of my 5 spots to the whole being dead thing, but in the interest of fairness, I'll at least give it to like the first iteration. Then it would probably be Dead Mom, No Reason, and the Deo scene.
Yeah, a lot of those did also make it into my top 5. The others I want to highlight are Barbara 2.0, What I Know Now, and Say My Name.
Ooh, yeah, Say My Name would have been number 6 on that list.
Just a very, very fun show. The songs are great, and the book is also very hilarious. Scott Brown and Anthony King, who did the book, just did a really, really stellar job at just translating it to make its own unique thing.
Now, I kind of have to wonder if I know there has been versions of a Beetlejuice sequel that have been in development as at least as far back as 1990. But part of me kind of has to wonder if the, albeit late success of the broader musical kind of got the gears turning on what eventually became Beetlejuice Beetlejuice.
Yeah, for sure. And if anything, I feel like Jenna Ortega and Wednesday at least got a little bit more down that line also. So that was just another wedge that they needed to just kind of maybe get to where we are now, where 26 years later, we are getting another Beetlejuice movie.
Yeah, this is a weird one in that I never thought we would actually get a sequel to Beetlejuice. Not just because Burton doesn't often do sequels. I think Batman Returns is the only sequel that he's directed. Any other movies that were follow-ups were either directed by someone else or like merely an executive producer. But to see Burton go back to this well almost kind of reminds me of Kevin Smith's Clerks 2. And I say that as a pretty high compliment because not only is Beetlejuice 2 or Beetlejuice, not only do I think it's a worthy successor to the original, much like the musical, it adds a lot more heart to the story, but also doesn't lose the its wild sense of humor. And boy, does it go in some pretty wild directions.
Oh yeah. Like, I was just so here for the vibes. Like, it just goes completely bonkers, and I was here for every minute of it.
Out of the new characters that are introduced, do you have a favorite?
My favorite would probably be, besides Bob, obviously, my favorite new addition to the cast would probably be Willem Dafoe.
Yes.
Because he was so funny. It's such a wacky idea for a character, but like he sells the hell out of it.
Not only that, I just realized how bizarre it is that this is the first time that, at least as far as I know, that Dafoe has worked with Tim Burton. Like that sounds weird because Dafoe's been in at least like 3 or 4 Wes Anderson movies. So it's just weird. It's just weird that like this is the first time he's worked with Tim Burton, and yet he fits in like a glove.
Mm-hmm. I kind of also just assumed that he had to have at some point, but no, it's just a match made in the netherworld, I guess.
Now, speaking of the other newcomers, or at least the main one, Jenna Ortega playing Lydia's daughter, Astrid. One thing I kind of like about this character at first, even though performance-wise, of course, people are going to make comparisons to Lydia from the first Beetlejuice, but I kind of like how she's introduced personality-wise as like the complete opposite of her mother.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, that just sort of is the perfect catalyst to kick off the wacky adventures that she embarks on later.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, the way they handle Charles is brilliant because, of course, there was no way they were ever going to bring Jeffrey Jones back for reasons that we will let you look up on your own.
Yeah. With that elephant in the room aside, how they handle it is just, let's just say that, like, if Tim Burton ever like kind of lost a mean streak, like for certain past movies of his, it is back now and it's so hilariously dark and mean. Just, I was laughing so hard. I was not expecting them to go that far with it, but I appreciate that they did.
Usually when a character is written out of a movie, they either don't address it or they're killed off. They get like a small tribute and then that's it. This time, because this is a franchise about death, it was the perfect opportunity for Burton to have fun at the actor's expense.
And also, I just want to highlight the great animated sequence in the movie. Just a lot of fun. I was very happy to see some animation in this as well.
Same. For those who don't know, Tim Burton has a long and storied history with animation. Like, he started his career as an animator for Walt Disney. He's probably best known for his stop motion animated stuff like Corpse Bride, producing The Nightmare Before Christmas, and Corpse Bride and Frankenweenie, which is a very underrated movie that came out in 2012.
Yeah, Frankenweenie is a lot of fun and also has like a really gloriously demented Catherine O'Hara voice performance as a, quote, weird girl.
Speaking of Catherine O'Hara, I think she's kind of doing her best stuff in this movie.
Yeah. And it's really like just always fun to watch her when she's around, no matter what. If she just continues that streak of being one of the funniest human beings in the room and just going for it. And how are we on spoilers for this?
By the time this podcast is recorded, it'll be like a week after the release. So we'll still tread a little bit lightly, but...
Okay. All I'll say is there is one thing and that happens. And immediately I said, yeah, that tracks. Just no notes.
Yeah. Now, I have seen some criticisms that the movie is overstuffed with too much plot. And I'm not going to say I disagree entirely. It's just that, speaking as someone who was a fan of the cartoon first and the movie second, yes, this movie can be a little bit overstuffed, but at the same time, it just kind of means that Burton and the writers were just kind of throwing everything in the kitchen sink, and that's a feature, not a bug.
Exactly. A lot of people are like just complaining about the plot, and my response is, you were watching Beetlejuice for the plot.
Exactly.
Because I love the movie. It has its issues also. It's not like a perfect movie. It's a great movie, but like it's just like all of this is just meant to be fun and silly and just wacky insanity. It's all vibes.
Yeah, this is a vibes movie, but in doing so, it's given Burton his creative life back, in my opinion.
And it all leads to one of like my favorite scenes that I've seen this year near the end. And I do wonder if we're going to see a little bit of a resurgence of a certain song the way Stranger Things did with Running Up That Hill. But that scene was just so goofy and just one-ups the ante, like in terms of pure dramatic chaos.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It was gloriously silly and everything I would want. And I feel like people comparing it to the Deo scene unfairly just kind of, I see them as sisters and not twins.
Same.
They both have like their own kind of function and great things about them. Like, this was just going so over the top that I was just enamored. And speaking of enamored, I also just want to highlight the new version of the main titles, the new orchestrations on that, which sounded so good in Dolby. I got goosebumps.
Yeah, I know it's kind of like saying water is wet to say Danny Elfman composed a great soundtrack for a Tim Burton movie, but no, I'm serious. Danny Elfman really did a great job with the score this time around.
And there's just like this gravitas that it just like sets in, and you're kind of just in for that ride going forward.
Even like during the funeral scene where where we hear the church choir rendition of Deo, it fits better in context because it's not taken so seriously.
Right. It's definitely self-aware. That was very funny. And also in terms of music, I just want to highlight that there is a moment where they actually play the theme from Pino Donaggio's score for Carrie, 1976. And I am fully convinced that they just put that in there for me specifically because I am one of the biggest Carrie fanatics out there. And within 10 seconds, I basically whispered to my boyfriend, I'm like, that's a thing from Carrie.
Nice.
I was probably the only person who was that happy to hear it, but I'm okay with that.
Someone we haven't talked about yet, speaking of a bunch of the new characters, Monica Bellucci as the main villain, Dolores LaVerge. She may not have had a lot of dialogue, but just her presence was enough. And how she's introduced with the Italian Gothic flashback sequence was just perfection.
Yeah, just her introduction was so cool. And also apparently done with a mix of practical and CGI, which is the way to do it. Just saying, just putting that out there. Use all of your mediums at once.
Yes. Mixed media just is for any movie, whether it's pure live action animation or animation. Using mixed media is probably the best way to have your art stand out.
And stand out it does. I also want to briefly touch on the relationship between Lydia and Astrid, which I think it did take a lot, I feel, from the musical in that aspect. And that was just something that really I couldn't avoid thinking about. But just also off camera, just seeing Winona Ryder and Jenna Ortega's interactions, it is just so wholesome and just so nice to watch because they seem to just really care about each other in a very genuine way that I just love to see.
Yeah, I noticed that as I'm watching the press tour. I don't think you could have found a better mother-daughter pairing than Winona and Jenna Ortega. Their chemistry is it's honestly incredible. And kind of the same thing applies to Jenna and Catherine. I wasn't expecting to just fall completely in love with 3 generations of D.
It's always fun to just watch their different interactions and just everything that goes on. And what's just funny is how Delia just kind of seems to be off in her own little world.
Oh yeah. So the last thing I want to bring up before we move on to, I guess, our epilogue of this podcast is this movie's going to make a lot of money. It's not a question of will it be successful? It's how much is this going to break box office records?
Well, apparently it's already the second highest grossing September opening day, if I'm remembering correctly. So I don't know how much, at least maybe for the year, because it'll be maybe in the top 10 question mark. That might be my prediction. Don't take my word for it because I'm terrible at predicting this stuff.
No, I think top 10 is fair if we're talking about the year.
Yeah, because it has been admittedly a bit of a slow year for box office.
Yeah, I mean it is because this is not only an election year, but this is sort of the year most affected by last year's double strikes. So of course things are going to be a little malnourished.
Right. And I also it was just announced today that the digital release is going to be in October. And I do kind of wonder, which on one hand, great for Halloween, but I do just wonder just how much that might cut into possible actual theater attendance.
Hopefully not much, because
I mean, I'm going to see it probably a few more times than Peter's myself, just because of how much fun I had.
Oh yeah, I definitely plan to see this again, like any given opportunity, just because I had so much fun. All of the the visual gags, the dialogue, these performances are just all delightful. Even Danny DeVito shows up for a few minutes as a janitor, and in that scene alone, he's at a 10.
Yeah, I watched this movie and I was just so I was just feeling so much joy, and it was kind of I just like kind of just was living for it. And I honestly just felt like a kid again, just watching this like unfold before my eyes and just kind of being transported to when I saw the first movie and just kind of fell in love with that like dark, twisted and chaotic, funny world that like was brought to us so many years ago.
Yeah. So if you are someone who even if you've never seen the original, first of all, do it because it's a classic. But like however your relationship is with Beetlejuice, I think the sequel is just a guaranteed good time. Now, the question I have for the epilogue of this podcast is where do we go from here? I know recently, even like I think just today, it was reported that Tim Burton is working on a remake of Attack of the 50-Foot Woman with Gillian Flynn. And of course, season 2 of Wednesday is on the way. But like, and I asked this question half rhetorically, is Tim Burton back?
I think it feels like he's certainly kind of regaining a bit of the momentum he lost over the last handful of films. And I'm just going to like say right here, like I have never actually technically disliked a Burton movie. But I mean, even I will like kind of say like he did lose a bit of his like specific like spark that really resonated with people. And it just feels like he's like kind of stepped back and like remembering like why he did what he did.
Yeah. And I think, again, kind of going back to my Clerks 2 comparison, I think it was a good thing for him to go back to the well of one of his own creations to find his spark again. And I really do hope that that momentum is maintained as long as possible.
And I will say, I feel like if they did make Beetlejuice, that might be tempting fate a little bit.
Yeah, it might be. One thing I kind of want to see, and this is mostly because of how much I fell for Brightman's interpretation. Like, I know the ship has probably sailed, but eventually I would like to see either a pro shot of the Broadway musical or a new animated series starring Brightman as the titular character.
Yeah, that would be really fun, considering he's also like voiced him again on a Teen Titans Go. It's definitely something he's comfortable with doing.
Yeah. So any final thoughts before we wrap this thing up?
So I mean, in all, like it's just Beetlejuice is a really, really fun time. And if you see it, I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. If not, whatever. But I had a lot of fun. And this franchise is just something that's like just kind of always been there with me. And I'm just glad that we got it. If it might just be this time, but I'm just glad we got this. I'm really thrilled with how this turned out.
I would say the same thing. And honestly, this whole sort of journey going back to rewatching Beetlejuice and watching the animated series, it's kind of made me realize how, say what you will about individual films in his catalog, Tim Burton might be one of, if not the most influential filmmaker in my lifetime. Like a lot of the properties that he's been attached to that have come out since I was born, like Batman, Beetlejuice, obviously, and just other things he's worked on. They've all sort of like connected to a lot of my interests. Like superhero movies are as big as they are because Batman was a huge success in '89, which kind of led to or was adjacent to the creation of Batman the Animated Series. And I'm pretty sure there are people who like got into either like alternative music or heavy metal through the Nightmare Before Christmas covers album. Like the list just goes on and on. Tim Burton has kind of played a huge influence in pop culture that's pretty much shaped who I am today. And I'm glad that I got to sort of reaffirm that through this journey. So with that having been said, Hayden, thank you for joining me on this episode. Where can people find you or not find you?
Yeah, don't find me. Don't resurrect me. Don't say my name 3 times, please. I beg of you.
As for me, you guys can find me in various social media sites at Captain K42. You guys can check out my quick thoughts on letterboxd.com/Coach K42. And you can follow Renegade Pop Culture on Facebook. And that place at Ren Pop Culture. You can also find us on YouTube, on Podchaser. Consider supporting our Patreon at patreon.com/renegade pop culture. Listen to all of our podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. And last but not least, everything can be found at renegadepopculture.com. Need an escape? So do we. That'll do it for this episode of Renegade Marquee. We will catch you guys later. Peace out.